Hello. This week we learning Parsha Shoftim, Judges. Moses instructs the people of Israel, the young generation. He continues his last sermon, and he tells them to appoint judges and law officers, law enforcement officers in every city when they conquer finally the promised land. He says to them, justice shall you pursue. He commands them, and you must administer it without corruption or favoritism. He tells them that crimes must be meticulously investigated and evidence thoroughly examined, and minimum of 2 credible witnesses required in order to achieve conviction and following punishment in the courts. Moses tells the young Israeli generation that in every generation there will be those entrusted with the task of interpreting and applying the laws of Torah. According to the law that they will teach you and the judgment they will instruct you, you shall do, he says. You shall not turn away from the thing that they say to you, to the right nor to the left. Meaning basically that no changes should take place in understanding of Torah at the time, with time. Shoftim also includes the prohibitions against idolatry and sorcery, laws governing the appointment and behavior of a king, and guidelines for the creation of the cities of refuge for the inadvertent killers, murderers, people who committed murder unintentionally by accident. Also set forth are many of the rules of war. The exception from the battle for one who has just built a home, or planted a vineyard, or got married, or is just simply afraid and soft-hearted. So these people were told, you can go before the battle. Just go home. The requirement to offer terms of peace was explained before attacking a city, any city. As well as stated the prohibition against wanton destruction of something of value, like for instance, it's forbidden to cut down a fruit tree when you lay a siege to a city. The Parsha concludes with the law of the Eglah Arufah, the special procedure to be followed when a person is killed by an unknown murderer and his body is found in a field not far away from some community, which underscores the responsibility of that community and its leaders, not only for what they do, but also for what they must have prevented from being done. Because they could provide some escort to the stranger when he left the city, gave him some food and this and that, and maybe he wouldn't be murdered. And this is the basic content of this parsha. Now, I think in this Torah portion, Shoftim, Torah provides an answer to one of the most fundamental questions. How to achieve in human affairs a balanced combination between freedom and order. Very topical theme right now in our society. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs-Zettel, who passed away, as you know, may God elevate and bless his soul, in his article, The Three Crowns, provides a very logical answer to this question. and it's very relevant to us today. In the beginning, he says, in Bereshit, we learned that God created order. It was an ordered world for Adam and Eve. Then he created humanity and gave us human beings the freedom of will. Unfortunately, humans use that freedom to damage and even to destroy the order created by God. Why I'm saying that? First, Adam and Eve eaten from the forbidden fruit. Right. So they brought death into their world, into this world. Then Cain was the first child of Adam and Eve, commits a murder of his brother Abel. And then humanity very quickly turned the whole world in their place of total violence, lawlessness, rape, murder, and robbery being basically normal daily life. All of that was taking place in the pre-flood generations. No wonder God even had some regrets regarding creating us humans and eventually sent the flood on all of them. He destroyed all of them, except Noah and his family. So after the flood, the first thing God does is he gave to humanity, through Noah, the 7 Noahide laws. I'm not going to read all the 7 Noahide laws now, but the 7th law is very relevant to this Torah portion, Shoftim, because it says, establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world. So, God restarts the project with Abraham, hoping to build the civilization through an exemplary one nation of the priests and the holy nation, through Abraham and his descendants. But the reality of life in Abraham's time was that unfortunately even our saintly forefathers encountered violence and chaos around them anyway. Example, Lot discovers that in the all about violence in Sodom. Abraham and Yitzhak fear for their lives while approaching Egyptian and Philistinian lands simply because of beauty of their wives and the danger to their lives because they could be killed simply because of their wives very beautiful in order for the wives to be taken to the leader's harem, the king's harem. Dinah, Yaakov's daughter, for instance, was abducted and raped in Shechem. This is why, with understanding that only in a society driven by high morals and ethics, we can succeed in God's plan. Because God's plan is to build a society which the foundation is the decent moral behavior towards each other and all. And Torah was given to us as a guide on how to build such a society. And this is what this Torah portion is all about. On the other side of the coin, for Jews to become really a nation of priests and a holy nation, they had to go through the crucible of the slavery in Egypt, so that they will experience themselves the total order without freedom and deprivation of slavery. So what we have is, before the flood, there was a lot of freedom, there was no order. Now, with Egypt, it was a dictatorial society based on kingship of the Pharaoh, right, from top down, and it was a dictatorship. So they had order, but no freedom. Nobody actually had freedom, whether it was Jewish or Egyptian man. We learn some of the answers to the dilemma of balancing the law and order of the society with individual freedom. Torah in Devarim is addressing this issue. It's talking about the power of the king and control of it, the importance of the king having not more than 18 wives, which is pretty a lot, and not becoming too wealthy. As well as it's important to understand that the king's power in Jewish world at least was very limited, because there was priesthood. And what the Torah is talking here about is the importance of the priesthood to provide ongoing connection to the Torah and God in long terms of history. Day in, day out, every month, all the yearly festivals, in all of this, right? That was managed and controlled by the priesthood. And the guidance of the prophets, which is the third leg, to the kings, community leaders, and all people on daily basis regarding all current affairs. So society must make sure that the king's power is limited, that the connection to God is maintained, and that religion never becomes political but is not ignored. Unfortunately, prior to COVID-19, politicians around the world were all concerned mostly about their next election and accumulation of their power, and sometimes involved with corruption and the generation of personal wealth. All religions were pushed to the back of the society's affairs, and the need for spiritual education is mostly ignored. Even in the state of Israel, yes, there are religious parties, but how many kids really know the Torah in Israel? Not many. Community groups, which in the past provided some guidance on moral principles to the society, they basically disappeared. I mean, all those community groups, they lost all their attraction to the people, society divided, and people stopped coming. The clubs, the whatever. This is why we experience around the world a third or whatever wave of COVID-19, and it will not go away. I think spiritual world is sending all of us a very strong message. What kind of message is it? Let's look at it together. One, the message is to the political leaders and the whole population. The message is well summarized by the words of Rabbi Hanina. Pray for the welfare of the government, for without it, men would eat one another alive. And then people do not exist to serve the state. The state exists to serve the people, whose true service is not to men, but to God. Another message to the communities and religious leaders of all religions. Please wake up to your God. You were given a role to provide eternal connection between humanity and spiritual world. Mostly by educating the young generations in what are the moral and ethical requirements of just society, which God wants us to build. That's the idea of religious leaders. What is more important is religious leaders of all religions should stop their active influence in politics and concentrate more on uniting their congregations into one humanity consisting from Jews, Christians, Muslims, and other religions, all living in harmony. COVID-19 is forcing the politicians to ask now the religious and community leaders for help, in some way empowering them. Why? Because they need them to convey the COVID-19 restrictions and vaccination requirements to their respective communities. Because sometimes people simply don't understand. All of this teaches us all to start taking care of others, people around us in public places, at least by wearing a mask and getting vaccinated. Yeah, maybe there is a danger to you a little bit, but so what? When you vaccinated, you theoretically are much lesser risk of passing the virus to other people. To take care of the elderly and vulnerable neighbors in the lockdown. Yes, all of this calamity is teaching us that too. It teaches us to respect and acknowledge the importance of essential services personnel, people, like doctors, nurses, chemists, shelf loaders in supermarkets, courier drivers, and many, many, many more. It teaches us the importance of the care workers, of the disabilities and elderly nursing homes personnel who provides incredible care for the elderly, disabled, and it's an essential part of life. The importance of communities and all people around us, the psychological benefits of keeping in touch with people from your acquaintances from your clubs or your friends, close friends, or just simply people you know. It's very important to keep in touch with them, all of them, at least via the internet. Why? Because we are a tribal animal. We need communications, we need connection. This is why I believe COVID-19 unfortunately will remain on this planet with us humans for a long time. Until we learn all of the above, what I mentioned, and that our rights come after responsibilities. Shabbat Shalom.
למען החי